You know how quickly things can flip in this league. 1 minute you're celebrating a Super Bowl run, and the next minute the same coaching staff is under fire and everybody is questioning whether the whole thing is about to collapse. That's the reality we live in with Philadelphia. And right now the hot topics aren't just about the roster or the players, it's about the staff, the stability, and whether this team can keep the momentum going without falling back into that familiar cycle of chaos. Before we even get into Eagles-specific stuff, there's something I've been noticing in the national media that's worth talking about. It's the way certain players get shielded from criticism when they mess up. After that playoff game, Josh Allen had multiple turnovers, and honestly, it was the kind of performance that should have brought a lot more heat, but instead, it felt like the narrative was, oh, don't blame him, he's a superstar, he's emotional. He's the face of the league, and if you're an Eagles fan, you remember how different it feels when your quarterback makes those mistakes. When the Chargers beat us, and the turnovers were catastrophic, the backlash was instant and relentless. Everybody had an opinion, and nobody held back. With Josh Allen, it seems like there's a different standard. Some people in the media were basically defending him because of how popular he is. I'm not here to bring race into it, but I will say this. The league and the media often want certain players to be the poster faces. They want guys who represent the NFL, and Allen has been positioned as one of those figures. Even though he still hasn't delivered the championship outcome people keep expecting, the league even adjusted overtime rules in his favor, like they wanted to give him a better shot at winning it all. And still, when the playoffs arrive, those turnovers show up at the worst possible times. Now don't get me wrong, he's a talented quarterback, and he's a great regular season player. There's no doubt he's elite in a lot of ways. But the postseason has been a different story. It's like he can't close the deal. And this isn't a one-game thing. It's a pattern that keeps repeating, yet the national media will excuse it or downplay it because he's one of their favorites. That's why the backlash feels muted. It's not that he doesn't deserve criticism. It's just that he's protected by the narrative. But let's stop dwelling on that and move back to what really matters. For us, the Eagles, there's a lot happening, especially with the offensive coordinator search. I've seen reports that the Eagles interviewed Josh Grizzard, the passing game coordinator from Tampa. That's interesting because he's one of those under-the-radar names. That doesn't come with a lot of hype. He's not a Mike McDaniel or a Cliff Kingsbury or one of those big-name offensive minds, but sometimes the best candidates are the ones nobody is talking about. The question is, has he called plays before? I'm not entirely sure, and that's something I'd like to hear your thoughts on. But what I do know is Tampa's passing game has been strong, and that's an area the Eagles clearly need to improve. This is where the whole Kevin Patullo situation comes back into the picture. The passing game was the weak link during our Super Bowl run, and it always seemed strange to me that he was promoted to offensive coordinator. If the passing game was the biggest issue, why promote the guy who was responsible for it? It didn't make sense. But with Grizzard, at least you can see the logic. He had success in Tampa, and maybe he deserves a shot. It's not the flashiest name, but sometimes the best hires aren't the ones everyone is hyped about. The Eagles are clearly taking their time with this search, and I know that frustrates fans. We want answers. We want someone who can come in and stabilize the offense and give us confidence that the future is secure. But the truth is, they might be trying to find someone who checks all the boxes. Will they stay for more than a year? Can they be successful here? Will they be able to handle the pressure that comes with being in Philadelphia? Those are huge questions. And the Eagles have a reputation for not being the easiest place to work. I've seen reports suggesting offensive coordinators don't even want to come to Philadelphia. And when people hear that, they immediately point the finger at Nick Sirianni. They say it's because his playbook is too complicated, or he doesn't give coordinators enough control. And I'm not going to deny that those are valid concerns, but I think it goes deeper than that. The real issue might be that the front office and ownership have a tight leash on the coaching staff. They want control. They want to be the ones calling the shots. And they don't want a head coach or coordinator who can come in and completely reshape the system. That's why we ended up with Nick Sirianni as head coach in the first place. They wanted someone who would fit within the structure they were comfortable with. And I'm starting to wonder if that's why even big names like Mike McDaniel might hesitate. What if he comes in and says, I need to bring my staff. I need to call the plays. I need freedom to run my offense. And the Eagles respond, no, you have to work within our system. That is not exactly an attractive pitch. On the defensive side, things might be different. Vic Fangio seems to have more freedom, and that makes sense. But on offense, it feels like the front office wants to keep Jeff Stoutland around no matter what, and I get that. He is a great coach, and he has been a key part of the offensive line's success. But if a coordinator comes in and wants to bring his own people or wants to overhaul the system, there could be conflict. And that makes the job feel unstable, because the truth is, the Eagles' offensive coordinator role has not been stable for years. Guys either get promoted, get fired, or leave for other opportunities. And if you are an experienced coordinator looking at that, you are going to ask yourself, is this a place where I can build something long-term? If you are not confident in the roster, if the offensive line is questionable, if the star receiver is unhappy, and if the quarterback situation is uncertain, it is hard to sell that job to someone. Now, when you look at the roster, there are a lot of questions that keep popping up. Is Jalen Hurts the long-term answer? Can he truly be the quarterback of the future, or is he just a bridge to something else? That's a question that hangs over the entire offensive coordinator search, because if the front office isn't fully committed to him, why would a coordinator want to come in and build around a quarterback who might not be here in a year or two? And then you look at the offensive line and the concerns become even more real. Landon Dickerson has had injury issues, Kemp Jurgens has not looked like he's at full strength, and Lane Johnson is getting older. The depth is not as strong as it should be, and the unit has been inconsistent. When the line isn't healthy, it affects everything. It affects the run game, the pass protection, and it affects the quarterback's confidence. If Hurts doesn't feel safe in the pocket, he's going to take more risks. He's going to force throws. He's going to make mistakes, and that's not the recipe for success. Then there's A.J. Brown. The situation with him has been one of the most talked about storylines in the NFL. He's one of the best receivers in the league, but he's also been vocal about his frustration. When a star player is unhappy, it creates a ripple effect. It affects the locker room, it affects the offense, it affects the chemistry. And if the Eagles don't address it properly, it could lead to a major shift in the team's direction. For a coordinator, that's a red flag. You don't want to come into a situation where you're not sure if your top weapon is going to be there. Saquon Barkley is another big question mark. He's a great player, but he's also dealing with injuries and age. Is he on the decline? Can he still be the explosive force he was in his prime? These are questions that need answers, and when you're trying to build an offense, you need to know what kind of players you're working with. If you're not sure about the health or the future of your running back, it's hard to design a system that relies on him. Then there's Dallas Goedert. Is he coming back? Will he be a part of the offense moving forward? These are important pieces to the puzzle. And when you have so many questions, it's hard to convince someone to come in and take on the job. The Eagles are a high-pressure environment, and if the roster is uncertain, it makes the job even harder, and that's why the offensive coordinator search has become such a big storyline, because the coordinator isn't just calling plays. The coordinator is responsible for shaping the offense. They are responsible for building the system, managing the players, and helping the quarterback grow. And if the Eagles don't have stability at that position, it's going to impact the entire team. Now, let's talk about the history of this franchise and how it affects the current situation. The Eagles have always been a team that wants control. They want to control the coaching staff. They want to control the system, and they want to control the direction of the team. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, but when it starts to limit the freedom of coaches and coordinators, it becomes a problem. You cannot attract the best talent if you are not willing to give them the tools to succeed. We saw it with Chip Kelly. He had success early on, but the front office never fully let him run the team the way he wanted, and the same thing has happened with other coaches. The pattern is clear. The Eagles want control, and that is going to create friction. And if you are a coach, you are going to notice that. You are going to ask yourself, do I really want to work here? And that is why the Eagles are having trouble attracting big-name offensive minds. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, the Eagles won a Super Bowl, so why complain? And I get that. But the fact that we won does not mean everything is perfect. It just means we had a great run. But now, we need to think about sustainability. We need to think about what happens after the run ends. We need to think about how to build a team that can stay at the top. And if the coaching structure is unstable, it is hard to do that. That brings us back to the question of Nick Sirianni. He has been successful, but the relationship with the front office seems strained, and if he is on A short leash. That is going to affect everything. It affects how coordinators view the job. It affects how players view the team, and it affects the long-term direction of the franchise. And then there is Christian Parker. The guy has been turning heads. And it is becoming more and more clear that he is going to get a head coaching job sooner rather than later. He has been doing a great job developing players and building a strong defense. And other teams are taking notice. He is already getting interviews with the Cowboys. And the Packers requested a meeting as well. That is the kind of momentum you do not ignore. If I had to choose, I would rather see him go to Green Bay than Dallas. Seeing him in Cowboys colors would be tough to watch, especially since they are a division rival. But if he is going to leave, I just hope it is somewhere that does not hurt us as much. And if Buffalo ends up opening up the job, that might be the best outcome. We would see him less often, and it would be easier to handle. The thing is, he deserves the opportunity. He has proven himself as a top coach. And the development he has had with players like Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, and others has been impressive. But as a fan, I want him to stay. I want the defense to keep growing under his leadership. But if the opportunity is to good, I understand why he would take it. Now, when we talk about the Eagles and this coaching carousel, it is not just about who leaves and who comes in. It is about the culture and the way the organization operates. Philadelphia is a demanding city, and the Eagles are a franchise that expects results. But there is a fine line between high expectations and a toxic environment. And I am starting to wonder if the front office has crossed that line. When you have a situation where coordinators are hesitant to even interview, you have to ask yourself what the problem really is. Is it the coach? Is it the system? Or is it the way the organization handles control? Because let us be honest. If you are an offensive coordinator with a strong resume, you do not want to walk into a situation where you feel like you are just a placeholder. You want to come in, implement your system, and be able to run it your way. You do not want to be second-guessed every step of the way. And you do not want to feel like you are constantly under the microscope. And if the Eagles are known for making sudden changes and putting pressure on coaches, that is going to scare off some candidates. That is not just my opinion. That is a reality in this league. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments and let's talk birds. The NFL rumor mill has been set on fire after an explosive report circulating inside league. Circles suggested that a Pro Bowl defensive end could be on the verge of landing in Philadelphia. According to whispers attributed to ESPN sources, the Eagles are positioning themselves for a major defensive splash that could reshape the balance of power in the conference. While no official confirmation has surfaced, the confidence behind the speculation has been enough to send shockwaves across the league. Executives around the NFL privately acknowledge that Philadelphia has been aggressively monitoring the market for an elite edge rusher, someone capable of changing games without needing schematic help. The idea of a proven Pro Bowl caliber defensive end joining an already formidable Eagles front has fueled debates among scouts and analysts, many of whom believe this would signal an all-in approach from the franchise. The organization has remained silent, but silence in moments like this often speaks louder than denial. Sources close to this situation suggest that the move would not be impulsive. Instead, it appears to be the result of months of internal evaluation, financial maneuvering, and quiet conversations. The Eagles have built a reputation for calculated aggression, striking when opportunity meets necessity. Adding a high-profile pass rusher would not only address immediate needs, but also send a message to the locker room and the rest of the league that complacency is not part of the culture in Philadelphia. Fans, meanwhile, are split between cautious optimism and outright excitement. Social media has erupted with speculation, jersey mock-ups, and highlight clips of potential candidates, even as insiders warn that nothing is finalized. Still, the fact that such a rumor has gained traction suggests there is real smoke behind the fire. If the deal materializes, it could redefine expectations for the Eagles and place enormous pressure on opponents, preparing to face a defense suddenly overflowing with star power. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.